Under the gray midnight rain, a woman in a torn evening gown ran through a narrow alley, clutching a small hard drive as if it were her very life. Behind her, the footsteps of the man who once said he loved her echoed, heavy, cold, relentless. He was no longer her fiancé, but a predator hunting his final prey. The alley was so dark it seemed to swallow every sound. Ava Chen's heels struck the wet bricks in uneven rhythm, echoing like desperate drumbeats urging her to move faster. Her once pristine white dress was now torn, streaked with mud, and clung to her trembling body. Blood oozed from a long cut on her arm, mixing with the rain into faint red streams. She limped, her ankle throbbing, breath short and sharp, chest burning as if her lungs were on fire. "Run, Ava! Don't look back!" a voice screamed inside her head. But her mind betrayed her fear. She looked over her shoulder. The tall shadow behind her didn't slow down. It followed her like a nightmare that refused to fade. He wasn't a stranger. Julian Vance, her fiancé, the man who once held her hand under the glow of chandeliers, was now a hunter in the dark, his expensive suit soaked, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can run away with that, Ava?" He snarled, gaze fixed on the small hard drive pressed against her chest, as if it were his own heartbeat she was holding hostage. Ava stumbled back, legs shaking. "Julian, stop!" she cried, but he lunged toward her, hand outstretched. The world shrank to the sound of her own heartbeat. Then another voice, deep and firm, sliced through the storm. "I think you should walk away." Julian froze. Ava's eyes darted toward the end of the alley. Through the sheets of rain, a man stood still, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark skin glistening under the faint streetlight. His gaze was calm, but there was something cold behind it, something unshakable. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't a vagrant. Just a man standing between shadow and light, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. Ava clutched the hard drive tighter, pulse hammering in her ears. Who was this stranger? And what kind of secret was she holding that could turn a powerful CEO into a predator in the night? The rain hadn't stopped. It fell in a steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of a city too cold to care who was bleeding. Ava Chen lay limp in the stranger's arms, her body drained of strength, her breath shallow. When the streetlight flickered across his face, she saw something in his eyes. Not curiosity, but the gaze of someone who had already seen too much. Marcus Jones said nothing as he carried her out of the alley. His jacket was soaked through, but his grip on her was firm, practiced, steady, like a man who had done this many times before, lifting fragile bodies from the edge of life and death. When his old pickup turned down a narrow street lined with broken lights, Ava drifted into unconsciousness. Just before the darkness took her, she whispered, "Julian Vance. He killed her." Marcus froze. The words cut through him like a blade through the silence that had become his second skin. He looked down at her, then turned away, hiding the flicker of something raw in his eyes. His apartment was small and clean, smelling faintly of antiseptic. He laid her carefully on the couch, pulled a blanket over her, and opened a metal first aid kit. His hands moved with mechanical precision, cleaning, disinfecting, bandaging. Every motion is efficient, deliberate, and strangely cold. A door creaked open behind him. A little girl with curly hair stepped out, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. "Daddy, who's that?" Marcus's voice softened instantly. "Just someone who got hurt, Zoe. Go back to bed." The girl glanced at the unconscious woman on the couch, her wide eyes curious. "Does she look like Mommy?" The question was so small, yet it filled the room with quiet. Marcus said nothing. He just reached out and brushed her hair aside gently. Zoe didn't realize her father was swallowing the same old ache that never truly healed, the scar that time refused to close. When the door shut again, he turned back to Ava. The woman who once graced magazine covers now looked impossibly fragile. Part of him wanted to help. Another part stayed guarded. Then he noticed the thing she was still clutching even in sleep. A small, black hard drive, wet from the rain. Ava woke at dawn. Pale light crept through the old window, painting cracks across the ceiling. She bolted upright, her hand reaching instinctively for the drive. "Looking for this?" Marcus's calm voice came from the chair across the room. He held it up before setting it on the table. Ava snatched it, eyes wary. "Who are you? Why did you help me?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He poured himself coffee and sat down. "I heard screaming. I saw someone bleeding." "That's all. That's all?" Ava scoffed, her voice brittle. "In this city, no one helps a stranger at midnight without a reason." Marcus met her gaze. "Maybe I just didn't want to watch someone die in front of me again." The words silenced her. In the dim light, she noticed his face. Tired eyes, faint scars near his temple. The kind of face that had survived too much. "Julian tried to kill me," she said quietly. "I found something he was willing to kill for." Marcus leaned back, listening. Ava began to speak, not like a CEO, but like someone stripped of all armor. She told him about Vance Innovations' clean energy project, the numbers that didn't add up, the shipments to embargoed countries, and finally, the encrypted files. Inside were fake contracts, proof of an illegal arms trade hidden behind corporate lies. "That hard drive holds everything," she said hoarsely. "I confronted him. He lost control." Marcus was silent for a long time before asking, slowly, "What name did you say?" "Julian Vance." The light in his eyes dimmed. "Do you know Sarah Jones?" Ava blinked. "That name sounds familiar. I think she emailed me a few weeks before she died. She was a journalist, right?" Marcus nodded. His voice dropped to a whisper. "She was my wife." The room fell still, the only sound the steady ticking of the clock. Ava understood instantly. This wasn't a coincidence. They had been pulled into the same storm, both chasing the same ghost named Julian Vance. Marcus stood by the window, looking out at the dull gray sky. Sarah was investigating Vance, too. She believed his company was smuggling weapons through shell projects. They called it a car accident. But I know it wasn't. Ava bit her lip. "I'm sorry." He turned, his eyes no longer angry, only weary. "Don't be. Just stay alive. He won't stop." She studied him, the quiet man who had saved her without asking why. It wasn't kindness she saw in his eyes, but something deeper. Loss, betrayal, and the hunger for justice. "You were a soldier?" she asked softly, noticing his precise movements. "Combat medic," he replied, sipping his coffee. "Now I fix washing machines." "Less blood?" Ava gave a small, shaky laugh. "And yet you saw plenty tonight." Marcus didn't answer. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. When he opened it, the dull gleam of a handgun caught the light. He didn't need to explain. She already understood. He wasn't just a man who fixed machines. "You have two choices," he said, voice low and steady. "Leave the city and let me handle it. Or stay and finish this. For Sarah. For yourself." Ava stared at the hard drive in her hands. She thought of all the years she'd climbed to power, only to fall to the bottom of her own truth. She'd already lost everything, her reputation, her safety, her love. There was nothing left to lose. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Marcus's answer was short. "Hunt." The evening that followed was fragile, almost peaceful. The rain had finally stopped, leaving only the soft drip of water from the roof. Zoe ran up holding a piece of paper. "Miss Ava, I made this for you." Ava smiled and took it. The drawing showed a woman with blonde hair standing in the light, one arm shielding a child, the other raised against something unseen. "That's my mom," Zoe said proudly. "She's a superhero. Daddy said she fought monsters." Ava stared at the picture for a long time. The simple pencil lines seemed to hold an entire heart, the heart of a child missing her mother. A tear rolled down Ava's cheek. She realized she wasn't just running anymore. She was continuing the fight another woman had started. The woman who had fallen so the truth could live. From the window, Marcus watched them quietly. The yellow light touched his dark brown skin, half warm, half cold. There was something in his eyes, a silent vow. This fight was no longer just his. Sometimes, strangers are the only allies we get. If you believe in the power of fated connections, hit subscribe now, because this story is only getting started. Outside, the night deepened. The city held its breath. Somewhere beyond the rain-soaked streets, Julian Vance sat in his luxury car, eyes sharp as blades. He knew she was hiding somewhere in that run-down neighborhood. And this time, he wouldn't come alone. He wouldn't leave any witnesses, not even a child. Dawn came, but it wasn't a sunrise. A gray light seeped through the torn curtains and fell across the cracked wooden floor, mixing with the smell of coffee and the metallic tang of oil from Marcus's workbench, where he'd been up all night not because he couldn't sleep, but because he'd grown used to watching while other people slept. Ava stepped out, hair a mess, wearing Marcus's shirt like a shield. "You still up?" she asked. Marcus didn't look up. "A little. Not now," he said, and she scanned the room. Wires and nails, bits of wood, a few gadgets that looked like homemade alarms. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Setting alarms," he replied bluntly. "If anyone opens a window or the front door, I'll know." The room went a little quieter after that. Zoe slept in the inner room, breathing even as the wind, and Ava felt something shift inside her. She wasn't afraid for herself, so much as she was terrified for the child and for the man who stood before her, whose calm looked like the kind only people who had lost too much carried. "Do you have a plan?" she asked. "You said you had someone on the board?" Marcus answered, "Laura Hastings, COO. She hates Julian, but he's got power." "Try to contact her," Marcus said. "At least let her know you're alive." Ava fumbled for her phone and discovered there was no signal. Marcus pulled the curtain aside, glanced down at the wet street, and said, "Maybe the weather." But his tone held another note entirely. By afternoon, the wind came harder and rain returned in sheets. Ava saw men in long coats moving through the block, synchronized and suspicious, earbuds in, one looking up with an expression that could freeze a room. She called Marcus quietly. He didn't answer with words. He pulled the curtain closed and said, "I see them." He checked the doors precisely, every motion efficient, taut. She could tell he was braced, not panicked, like someone who had rehearsed danger until it became routine. "Keep Zoe in the back room," he ordered. "Whatever happens, don't come out. Understand? What about you?" she asked. "I'll handle the rest," he said, handing her a small folding knife. "Only for protection, not to be a hero." Ava wanted to say more, but swallowed the words and took Zoe into her arms. The little girl rubbed her eyes and mumbled, "What's wrong, Miss Ava?" "Nothing, sweetheart. We're just playing hide-and-seek," Ava answered, and Zoe giggled because she didn't fully understand. Her innocence made Ava's chest ache. Night fell, and the whole block went dark with a sudden snap. No flicker, no warning, just a hard cut that threw the apartment into black. Marcus moved at once, a silhouette lit by the faint reflection of his lighter on metal as he checked the gun. "Power out, and the signal's gone." "Not random," he said. The apartment became so still that the rain on the tin roof sounded like a count. Then, faint but real, came the creak of boards from downstairs. Marcus signaled silence and moved like a shadow, running wires around a doorknob, jamming a chair for a crude trip mechanism. Simple things that might buy seconds. Footsteps closed in. A low, unfamiliar voice called from the hall, "Check apartment 3B. He ordered it himself. Don't leave anyone." Zoe clutched Ava's hand, and Ava pulled her into a corner and pressed a finger to her lips. Then the neighbor's door exploded inward. Smash of wood, screams, a scatter of furniture, and a sudden silence. The footsteps drew nearer. Someone banged on their door. "3B, open up!" No one answered. The knock came again, and the door shook. The third kick sent it flying. When the door blew open, the tripwire did its work. A chair and a table crashed down, and 2 torches fell. 2 of the attackers went down hard, howling. Marcus moved like water. No gunshots, just controlled force and quick, efficient holds. One man went down limp. The other struggled and was pinned before he could call out. Ava's heart slammed, and her hand whitened around the small knife. Zoe whispered, "Is he okay, Daddy?" Ava forced steady breath into her voice. "Daddy's fine," and listened to Marcus working. He slipped, struck, vanished into the dark with a cruelly precise rhythm that kept the attackers from coordinating. Then glass shattered, sharp, loud, and a huge figure crashed in through a window, rain spraying the old wood floor. Marcus turned and raised his gun, but the intruder hit like an animal. The impact sent Marcus's pistol flying. It skidded across the floor with a dry clang and disappeared into a corner. They grappled. The apartment shook with thuds and the heavy sound of 2 bodies colliding. At the same time, the front door burst open and a beam of a flashlight swept through the room. A voice cold and wet with rain calling, "Game's over, Ava." Julian Vance stepped inside, shirt soaked, hair plastered, a face twisted with hate, and in his hand a silenced pistol glinted, the barrel a cold promise. Marcus had just floored the first man with a turning blow and saw Julian moving toward the bedroom where Ava and Zoe hid. He lunged, abandoning his own fallen weapon because seconds counted more than firepower. The 2 men crashed into each other in the threshold. The force sent Julian's gun flying, sliding across the wet floor to rest near the foot of the bed, only a few feet from where Ava sat. Clutching Zoe, Ava screamed and shielded Zoe, pressing her small body into her own, trying to soothe and breathe for both of them. In that chaos, she didn't see the pistol on the floor. Zoe did. From her low vantage, she saw the black metal catch the light and gleam. Outside the bedroom door, Marcus and Julian continued to grapple. Rain, breath, and the groan of warped wood blended into the scene. Marcus had Julian pinned, but the man who had fallen through the window staggered up and grabbed Marcus, pulling him back into the living space. They crashed into a cabinet and a table with a terrible crash. Julian, panting, scrambled up and stooped to pick up the gun by Ava's feet without noticing a small pair of eyes watching him. "Give me the drive," he hissed. "Without it, you're nothing, Ava." Ava forced the name out, voice hoarse. "You killed Sarah." Julian sneered and raised the pistol. "You think you're worth anything? Your price is death." Ava tightened around Zoe and stepped protectively in front of her. "Julian, don't," she began. "Shut up!" he roared, the muzzle pressing hot and close to her forehead. Marcus saw it all, the reflection off the metal, a raindrop falling from Julian's hair to the barrel. He shouted, "Julian, stop!" But thunder swallowed his voice. The distance was 10 paces, too far. He lunged anyway, but Julian pulled the trigger. Click. The dry, hollow sound that wasn't a shot echoed like a verdict. Julian frowned, racked the slide, then looked up and froze. Zoe, still pressed to her mother, held something small and bright in her fist, a magazine, silver with a child's clumsy fingers wrapped around it. Her voice trembled, but clear as a bell. "Don't touch my family." Marcus's punch landed clean and final, as if his whole body had been built for that one moment. Julian hit the floor hard, air bursting from his lungs in a dry gasp, eyes wide with shock. The gun spun twice, then lay still in a puddle of rainwater. For a breathless instant, the room was nothing but rain dripping through the broken window and the ragged rhythm of survival. The man who had crashed through the window lay crumpled in the corner, motionless. Ava clutched Zoe tightly, shaking as if her body hadn't yet realized it was still alive. Then came the sound of footsteps, voices shouting, and the flash of red and blue flooding the walls. Neighbors had called 911. Officers burst in, commands slicing through the chaos. "Hands behind your head! Down on the floor!" Julian was yanked upright, wrists locked in cold steel. He still shouted hoarsely, "You'll regret this, Ava! I swear you will!" Ava didn't respond. She just held Zoe closer, feeling the small heartbeat against her chest, like an anchor in the storm. Marcus stood still, rain soaking his shoulders, eyes fixed on the scene. The nightmare was over, or so it seemed. He knew another battle had already begun. The police station gleamed under harsh white lights that left no room to hide. Julian sat upright, flanked by two attorneys like a wall of glass and money. His voice was smooth, polished. "I'm the victim. Miss Chen stole company property, kidnapped my daughter, and hired this man to attack me." The detective across the table looked up calmly. "You came prepared with a story." Julian smirked. The truth always has two sides. Behind the one-way mirror, Ava sat quietly. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes were steady now, clear, deep, awake. Marcus stood beside her, fingers locked together, gaze fixed on the monitor. Julian didn't know that the hard drive had already been found. Dry, intact, and in Marcus's jacket pocket. Inside it lay every secret he had buried for years. The digital forensics lab was silent except for the soft hum of servers. One by one, folders opened on the screen. Contracts, shipments, Sarah J. Names, numbers, emails, each a witness lined up in rows. A technician looked up, voice low. He routed funds through 8 shell companies, all linked to one Cayman Islands account. Marcus's fists clenched as his eyes landed on Sarah Journalist. Then the video started. A black car losing control on a bridge, flames rising. A second camera revealed the signal that had remotely triggered the brakes, originating from Vance Innovations' private server. Ava closed her eyes. In her mind, she heard Sarah's voice again. "If I disappear, it means they fear the truth." Julian saw the footage too, from his interrogation room. For the first time, his face changed, color draining, hands twitching. He tried to laugh, but the sound broke apart before it could leave his throat. The next morning, the news exploded like a detonation. Vance Innovations under investigation for corruption, fraud, and murder. Every paper, every screen bore the same headline. Stocks plummeted. Board members were arrested. The same people who once called Julian a genius now deleted his photos and scrubbed their names from his history. The empire he had built on lies was collapsing, brick by brick. Ava was summoned as a key witness. She walked to the stand, not in designer suits, not with polished hair, but as a survivor. Her voice carried steady through the courtroom. "I trusted him. In return, he killed my friend and almost killed me. And his own daughter. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for Sarah, and for the truth." Marcus sat among the spectators. He didn't look around. He only looked at her. No words passed between them, yet both understood. This was the ending Sarah had earned. When the video of the crash replayed before the court, Julian snapped. "Fake! Manipulated! She betrayed me!" he shouted. But no one answered. Only the clatter of a keyboard and the steady writing of the court clerk filled the silence. Then Julian pointed at Marcus, eyes wild. "You! I should have killed your whole family when I had the chance." The room froze. The judge's gavel hit the desk, but it was too late. That single sentence, caught on record, broadcast live, sealed his fate. Julian sank back into his chair, trembling. For the first time, he understood what it meant to lose power. Not from Marcus's fists, but from the weight of the truth itself. Ava watched him quietly, not with anger, but with a mournful pity for the man who had chosen power over his soul. Marcus stood in the back, taking one slow breath. Outside, a light rain began to fall again, soft, steady, like the city itself exhaling after a storm. People called it the trial of the decade. But to Ava, it was simply the day she stopped being afraid. Sarah's name was cleared. Zoe could finally sleep without nightmares. And Marcus, under the dim courthouse lights, met Ava's eyes and gave a single silent nod. A vow unspoken, yet clear. The battle was over. But the truth would live on. The courtroom fell into heavy silence when the verdict was read. Julian Vance was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He only smirked, the last hollow echo of a man still clinging to the pride of a fallen king. Outside, rain drizzled across the courthouse steps. Ava Chen didn't carry an umbrella. She let the raindrops trail down her face, cold but strangely peaceful. After everything, she was still standing. Vance Innovations had been rebuilt and renamed the Jones-Chen Foundation in honor of Sarah Jones. The media called her the Phoenix Reborn, a symbol of strength and justice. And Marcus? He vanished quietly from the spotlight. No interviews, no photos, just silence, as if he'd been erased from the story he helped end. A week later, Ava found him. His apartment was small and quiet, much like him. Zoe sat on the floor, humming softly as she drew. A half-packed suitcase rested beside the couch. "You're really leaving?" Ava asked, eyes lingering on the open case. Marcus looked up with a faint smile. "Zoe needs a quieter place, and maybe I do too." "The company wants you to lead the security division," she said hesitantly. "I want you to. You both deserve a new beginning." He didn't answer right away. After a long pause, he said simply, "My work here is done." Something in his tone made her shiver. She looked around the apartment. Everything was too neat, too final, as if he wasn't just leaving, but erasing himself. "Where will you go?" she asked. Marcus stopped packing. His gaze turned cold, distant. "Ava, I didn't save you. I used you." The air froze between them. Ava stared at him, disbelieving. "What did you just say?" Marcus sat down, his voice low, stripped of warmth. "I'd been tracking Julian for 2 years. I knew he'd come for you. I knew you had the evidence. I was waiting for him to make his move." She took a step back, voice trembling. "So that night, in the alley, it was all part of your plan?" "Yes," he said quietly. "I needed that hard drive, and I needed someone strong enough to bring him down. You were perfect." Ava let out a laugh that broke halfway into a sob. "So all of it, your concern, your protection, it was just to use me as bait? To get revenge for your wife?" Marcus didn't deny it. "Sarah deserved justice. I couldn't stop, not even if it hurt you." Her heart cracked open, raw and trembling. The man she had trusted, the man she had seen as her savior, had only been playing a role. "Did you ever think about me, Marcus?" she whispered. He was silent for a long time before answering. "I did, but I chose Sarah. Justice doesn't have room for emotion." He closed the suitcase. Zoe had fallen asleep on the couch, head tilted against a pillow, her small face peaceful. Marcus lifted her gently into his arms. "Justice for my wife has been served," he said quietly. "My mission is over." "And me?" Ava asked, voice breaking. "What am I in all this?" Marcus paused at the door. "You're proof that sometimes good people get used. For the right reason." The door clicked shut. The sound was final, cutting clean through the silence. Ava stood motionless in the empty apartment, unable to tell whether she had won or just survived. She sat down at the table, opened her laptop, and found one last file inside the hard drive. A voice recording marked S.J. Final. Sarah's voice filled the room, soft yet unwavering. "If justice demands, someone must be hurt. I only hope they're strong enough to keep living." Ava closed her eyes. The tears came, but they no longer carried fear, only release. She knew she would never be the same. Night fell over the city. Inside the new office of the Jones-Chen Foundation, the lights still burned. Ava sat alone, typing the first lines of the ethical code of technology. Sarah's legacy and her own redemption. Can an act of revenge still be called justice if it saves an innocent life? Or in the end, are we all just pieces on someone else's board, without any true heroes at all? If this story made you stop and think, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to Talk Story for more powerful stories that stay with you long after they end.